First and foremost, the most important thing in the world is that we all actively choose to prioritize objective truth and moral integrity within ourselves, and make conscious efforts to avoid forming false belief structures or becoming hateful due to unobserved subconscious biases. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did I just clickbait you so that I could attempt to succinctly mold the core foundation of the very way that you fundamentally observe the world around you to encourage you to be a more self-aware and better person? And maybe I kind of did that a little bit because that's sort of important to me, but I am actually going to talk about this big fun impeachment inquiry, so it's not totally clickbait, even if this is the most important part. So, depending on what you already believe about this, you can find tens of thousands of discussions supporting your perspective. If you desperately want Trump out of office, you can look up nothing except for confirmation that this is the most damning evidence of impeachable, treasonous incompetence that anyone has ever seen. And if you're a Trump supporter, you can choose to see only confirmation that this is an absurd joke, that absolutely nothing remotely impeachment-worthy has occurred, and that this hearing completely collapsed on itself. That being said, I would like to simply observe the facts of the situation as I've been led to understand them. So, the purportedly impeachable accusation is that Trump withheld aid from Ukraine on the condition that they would only receive aid if they investigated his political rivals, and that this is an abuse of the office of the president. So, was the aid withheld specifically for this reason? Based on the public transcripts of the communication between Trump and Zelensky's direct testimony, and the fact that the aid was released without confirmation of that specific request, it seems safe to say that the aid wasn't withheld on that specific contingency, so that whole narrative is all kind of an exaggerated, speculative fabrication. It seems that it was withheld based on a broader probe into corruption, so really the question is temporarily freezing aid like that an abuse of the office of the president, or is that within the rights of the president? And it seems to me that it really isn't an actual technical abuse of the office. It's fully within his rights to do that, as well as to appoint ambassadors at his leisure. So it honestly seems like this whole thing is just a sham to get people who already violently hate Trump hopeful that he will be impeached and then violently upset when he isn't, and I can only imagine why anybody would want to take the American public on an emotional roller coaster like that. Anyways, that's pretty much the whole hearing. The accusation appears to be fundamentally exaggerated and invalid. And, you know, if he were actually impeached over this, I would feel like the integrity of the office of the presidency itself has been subverted and invalidated. Now, I sincerely try to check my own biases, and I think others obviously should too when considering situations like this. But I honestly think that a lot of these people who are frothing at the mouth about this being worth impeaching Trump over, if they could imagine everything happening in exactly the same way, but the accusation being towards Obama, they would feel very differently. And when all this started coming out, I was fully prepared to accept evidence of impeachment-worthy actions. But this really seems like a very trivial thing which is being purposefully blown out of proportion in an effort to rile people up. They're just making mountains out of molehills. Now, I'm not a huge Trump supporter, but the more the Democrats and the media continuously double down on trying to turn every inconsequential nuance into some dramatic incendiary smear about how much of a psychopathic idiot monster Trump is, the more I feel like my intelligence is being insulted by assholes who think they can control my mind, and the farther I'm driven from the Democratic Party. And this has obviously been happening almost every single day for around 4 years now. Not everything Trump does is the worst thing ever. He's honestly trying to make things better. Even if I disagree fundamentally with a lot of the ways he's going about it. Anyways, while the Republican speakers were primarily focused on the validity of the impeachment inquiry, it honestly seemed like the Democrats had very little interest in the accusation and were primarily focused, at least on this second day, on the injustice of Trump removing Yovanovitch from her position, as well as many other emotional appeals and baited questions accompanied by dramatically exaggerated vocal inflections. This really corroborates my theory that this was never actually about impeachment, but purely a psychological operation just to manipulate the American public. because the Democrats had plenty of time to formulate their questions and decide how they were going to go about this, so they knew exactly what they were focusing on. However, honestly, from the information I've been given, I am led to agree with the Democrats on the topic that perhaps Yovanovitch really didn't need to be removed, that it was very rude and uncalled for to question her integrity and publicly smear her. Though I would mention that Trump questioning her integrity in his call with Zelensky was not a matter of public smearing until this whole, what appears to be fraudulent impeachment inquiry, made it a matter of national interest. So when the Democrats repeatedly hammered in that, oh, it's so terrible that Trump flippantly said such an honorable person as you was bad news on the phone, it sincerely feels like their entire intent had absolutely nothing to do with actually impeaching the president, but merely with creating a spectacle so that they can manipulate people. And that sort of tactic is so revoltingly dishonest and frankly psychopathic that my trust in all of the Democrats involved in this particular process has been essentially completely obliterated by this hearing. If you want to manipulate and control people so severely that you would go to this degree of underhanded tactic just to get people's attention, then I don't know if it's fundamentally possible to redeem you. Anyways, that's pretty much my honest interpretation of this impeachment inquiry. I watched pretty much everything from both days, and not a whole lot of, there wasn't any damning evidence. I was waiting for it. It wasn't presented. In any case, I would like to end this video with a quote from Mr. Schiff, which is that the founders did not intend that impeachment be employed for mere differences over policy. Now, being an intelligent person, I honestly think that he fully understood the irony of that statement.